ZvT versus Mech, Abyssal Reef. So, of the new maps, Abyssal Reef is rather large. There's a very tight choke at this ramp and a tight choke here, so kind of the polar opposite of Belshir, which is a very open natural. This one has a very congested natural expansion, so something like an early Ling Flood would probably be a lot worse than on that map. So how do we play a macro game? If attacking into 2 bases is bad, how do we defend 3 bases into 4 bases into Hive Tech and all the amazing Zerg units? So if at first you don't type GLHF correctly, you should try again, I suppose. The opponent would get the idea though. So this game, Terran goes Reaper into Hellion pretty quickly. Some things to consider about the Reaper: there is a cliff right here where they can jump to your main, so you should anticipate with this queen zoning that Reaper out, try and mitigate damage. Always try and use the links to protect your drones, not to chase the Reaper off of creep. So I'm taking my 3rd base, killed the Reaper, that's really great for me. And I'll send my links to go scout, having done that. Notice the Hellions. They do almost no damage to rocks. Amazing. So I sent some Lings over, and the Hellions very wisely went on and shot them. But at least I got the read that I needed. 4 Lings to know that Hellions are coming, I would say, is definitely worth it. So now I'm going to be defending 38 drones with some Lings and some Queens. With this Overlord, I see a Banshee, which is really nice. And then we'll kind of follow my response to this. This ends up being a pretty messy engagement, where I have to pull workers around and I lose a decent amount. So I built a Spore to save a drone there and canceled it. I have 6 queens right now and I'm still making queens. Queens are really good in this scenario. I'm still going to take some tech behind this so I have some advantage. So I see the Hellbats coming in, let's slow it down. So I'm trying to take the fight over by the Spore, because that's a pretty big part of my anti-air DPS. If I can get a fight at the Spore, then my queens can focus on the ground fight, and the Spore can deal with the Banshees. So I'm losing a decent amount here, but I still have a worker lead, despite all of this chaos. And I'm at base up, so even if I fall slightly behind in workers, I can just do a big drone cycle and then get in a pretty decent spot. Yep, so I'm making drones, trying to defend Hellbat. It's always better to lose mining time than to lose workers, so pulling them to the 3rd and having 30 like this is definitely preferred to losing all those workers with the Hellbat. And then I'm taking a Spire. So the Spire here is my way of making a pretty good tier 2 unit that will be able to deal with all of this harassment. Mutas can deal with the Banshee, they can deal with Hellions, they could deal with Liberator harass, like if they're trying to siege your worker line. And it also allows me to kind of get rid of that gas bank that I'll build up with 3 base economy and all the gases. So I'm going over to the opponent side of the map with some Lings. If you make some units, might as well send them across. Lings are the fastest unit in the game, so getting value from their mobility means running around doing stuff. See a lot of Hellbats here. And I try and run through it. I don't think this was the best decision, because I don't really get that much work done with the Lings. Probably would have been better to just keep them on my side of the map. Based on the count of Hellions, I can pretty much rule out bio, and if it is going to be a bio transition, it'll be a pretty late and weak one. So I make a Mutaflock, let's see how many. Oh, the Spire's not done. Basically, I'll just spend my gas, make as many mutas as I can. I'm taking attack upgrade. I actually think I might prefer Carapace here, just because the Carapace upgrade scales better into having good Corruptors and Broodlords, which is kind of the end game against Mech. So just 5 mutas here. spent the gas bank. 5 mutas will be enough to deflect Banshee. It'll also force out some Thors. A lot of turns will just make some safety Thors regardless. So turns making 2 Thors, taking Blue Flame, taking +2 Mech attack. And I dropped the Infestation Pit kind of as my next choice after the Spire. The main reason for that is that's going to get me to Hive pretty fast, and also unlock Swarmhost. Swarmhost is a surprisingly good unit against mech stuff. It really slows their pushes moving across the map. I'm making 14 drones just to saturate the 4th straight away. Take a big initiative. Let's see the units tab. 77 drones. Really nice. Hive. Hang on, buddy.
Amas de minerais épuisé.
Hive Tech. Making more queens. Hydroden. The Hydroden is really nice against mech because Hydras support Broodlords really well. They can beat the crap out of Vikings. Really good against Banshees. Just a general nice gas expenditure. And now I've switched into ranged upgrades. I got melee 1-1 because I wasn't sure whether it was Bio or mech, and then now I'm taking ranged. Having +1 melee isn't that bad because it's going to help the lings later on, and also help the broodlings. So I'm just going ham on the Swarmhost production now. 12 Swarmhosts, Hive, Overlord speed. Mutas are going around, being annoying. So my Swarmhosts are out, Creep Spread is moving forward. Trying to pick off a tank on the map. How many Swarmhosts do we have here? 12 plus 2 more, at least. And the really nice thing about Swarmhosts, and it's not quite as strong as it was in Heart of the Swarm, is that they have disposable units. So it's stuff that they can use on a cooldown that is trading with real value units of the Terran. So trading with the Hellbats there is kind of getting rid of some of their minerals and factory cycles for just a cooldown. And I lost a base here, but I pulled the workers away. You see 29 workers at my 30 again. So I'm okay with that. I'm okay with losing a base, getting into my Hive Tech, getting my Greater Spire, and using the Swarmhost to just not die. In ZvP, the unit that would fill this role would be Lurker. Lurker's the sturdy, anti-ground, I don't want to die to you type of unit. The reason it's not the unit against Terran is because siege tanks outrange Lurkers, and Liberators can beat Lurkers. And Banshees are really good against Lurkers. So Lurker just really isn't a part of the meta against Mech Terran, kind of for those reasons. But the Swarmhost is really nice. This is a very large troop of Swarmhosts. 22 Swarmhosts. You pretty much want to try and use the Locust every time it's off cooldown. So if they're pushing you, then you're going to use it for defense. If they're not, then you can use that for offense. It's a really good way to kind of get some action going in the game. Anytime the opponent doesn't have anything to do, they're going to be doing pretty well with their macro, or at least the best of their ability. So I'm just sending those in and continuing to make Corruptors, +2 range, Hydra range, +3 armor, taking another base. If you have the money, double expanding isn't bad after you lose a base. I probably should have done that, I have enough minerals here. I'm making a few more mutas to deal with these Liberators. The mutas were traded out against a Thor, which was a pretty medium-sized mistake by me. Burrow. Burrow is a good macro expenditure to sneak in. If you have a really nice economy and lots of money coming in, it just allows you to protect your workers. If there's a Hellion drive-by, which there will be a little bit later on, you can burrow your workers and they have to spend a scan to kill them. So the amazing Thors, killing Broodlords. The amazing Locust killing Thors. Wow. And these Lings are quite good against Thors. It's just a huge unit that has to focus on a tiny Zergling. Which means the Queens and Hydras can do a lot of work. Queens, Hydras, Lings, +3 armor in production. Transferring workers as the base is mining out. Carapace from the Spire, Adrenal Glands. In this type of game, if you think about the production tab, it's a really big advantage to just have more things running at a given time than the opponent, like by the unit. So we have 4 and then 5. It kind of adds to the diversity and the fluidity of what the players can go for. So right here I'm upgrading my air units and my Lings and my melee stuff, which is Lings and Broodlings. Terran's making a pretty diverse composition. Tanks, Liberators, Ravens, recalibrated explosives, ship plating 2, and Corvid reactor. Amazing. Amazing macro from the Terran. And Vipers. So with the Viper, basically, it doesn't really matter how many you make. Like, 5 I would say is the lower end against a mech style like this, and I have 8. You could probably make 10 if you had the gas for it. Vipers are just pretty nice if you can get the blinding clouds on the ground and the parasitic bomb on the air and maybe abduct some Thors or something into your army. But the Swarmhosts have just been in the game for so long. Let's take a look at their kills. Let's take a look at this. 2, 2, 1, 0, 3, 2, 1, 2, 0, 1, 0, 6, 3, 1. Yeah, so they've gotten nice value. And they've traded that with their disposable units, which is awesome. Against Mech, a lot of games go into a starvation type of scenario, where the whole map is getting mined out, and it really depends on how well you were getting value from your units over the course of the game. And the Swarmhost is a great unit for not needing to trade the map on the resource. You're trading a cooldown from a smaller set of the map resource for the initial Swarmhosts. One of the weaknesses of the unit that comes with the Legacy of the Void change is that Swarmhosts cost more supply than they did before. So if you're thinking about your 200 supply army, it's an efficient unit, but it's a fairly weak unit for its kind of value density per supply. Pulling some units. I'm a little bit clustered here, so the bombs, they hurt. But I'm not dead, which is great. A lot of the time when you're facing like a sturdy mech player like this who's doing the big pushes, it ends up being an exercise of musical bases, where they invest their entire army to kill a base, and even if you have a pretty strong army, sometimes you'll lose the base, and that's okay. You just take a new couple bases. So this was a nice meme. Get some Swarmhosts, put them in a Nidus their production. Basically, you want to think about the map and where the Terran army is and what location you can hit that is very far from that. This main is very far from the base that they're actively sieging with their entire army. So I get to kill all these add-ons, and that's a huge interruption in the Terran production. You see the top right corner, they have 117 supply. The mech units, they take up a lot of supply, so if they were able to make a unit production cycle, they would be kind of remaxing alongside me, but by virtue of doing that Nidus Swarmhost, I interrupted their remax while I'm remaxing. So I'll be able to get that big, huge army. And now I could use my Swarmhost to defend again if I so chose. We both have around like 50-something workers. In the late game, when players are getting up to 200 supply, sometimes it's forgivable, understandable to drop below the 70 worker range. If you have a very high tempo composition like Lingbane Muta or Biomine or something, a lot of times players will have around 70 workers, sometimes even 80. But if you're getting pretty much the strongest army that you possibly can of really expensive units, and you want to win the main fight, usually you want to have a bit fewer workers than that. Because workers do kind of clog up your supply. Another thing I could do is trade out some Swarmhosts, but they've been really valuable in this match, so I didn't really feel like I needed to trade them out. The sensor tower is actually pretty hard to see on this mini-map. I was a bit confused as to why they scanned my Swarmhost, but you can see that very slight ring on the map. It would be nice if there was a way to see that a bit better. But a lot of times with the new maps there are some difficulties like that, like sometimes the liberation zones are particularly hard to see. But I'm continuing with the theme of Broodlords, Hydras. I have 17 Hydras right now, 6 Vipers, 3 Queens, and making more Broodlords. Such macro. Taking all the upgrades, +3 range, +3 melee, +2 air armor. Bases, creep tumors, extractors, and getting ready for another fight. So this time I'm going to opt to have my Swarmhosts with the army. Can all work together. How much supply of army is that? 146 supply of army, 47 of workers. Terran has 114 of army, 55 of workers. Ow. Ow. 9 corruptors. What can the Vipers do? Let's say ideally the Vipers will be split up a little bit more than this. Parasitic Bomb is amazing. It used to be more amazing, but they nerfed the damage by like 1/3, I think. Something worth considering would be putting the Broodlords on a separate hotkey. I had my Swarmhosts on the hotkey where I would sometimes put my Broodlords. I think that's okay. I'm just gradually whittling away with those Swarmhosts. They've kind of been the main kind of damage dealer and threat for the Terran player. I have the core of Hydra Queen, Corruptor, Broodlord, Viper, but that's more of not dying. I haven't been pushing into the Terran. It's been more chipping away at their army and their bases with the Swarmhosts, so they're kind of the main gankers in the game. I would say as a role of a unit, the Swarmhost is really the true Zerg ganking unit where it can roam around the map really effectively and just get kills, take some objectives, but it isn't really a sustained army fighting unit because they have the cooldown limitation on their damage output. They used to be a sieging unit where they would just have the endless waves of locusts that attack into the opponent, and it created a lot of stalemate games. So by virtue of having a cooldown, you have to be a little bit more deliberate about how you're using the locust cycles, what your target is going to be, and how you're going to survive between the locust cycles. So kind of wrapping up the game here, I want to see what the final kills were on the locusts as the opponent leaves, because I think it was quite a few. Okay. 3, 6, 4, 3, 6, 4, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 3, 2, 4, 5, 7, 7, 4, 1. So these were the real heroes this match. Just being able to get knights into the main, hit the production, hit this base, hit this base. They threw some over here. They fought with the army at a few points. And having them on their own hotkey is another really important thing. Like, I didn't really have a Mutaflock later on, so you could think about using these instead of Mutas against Mech. If there are Liberators that are upgraded and Thors, Mutas aren't really going to be a great unit against Mech. Thors are really good against Broodlords, so it's harder to get the Terran to invest heavily into tank and then do a big Muta switch like you would in HOTS. Now it's kind of like Swarmhosts are the harassment unit. Mutas are a small defensive piece that can keep you safe against Hellions or Liberators or Banshees or whatever. But Swarmhosts do the work.